I originally met my wife back in 1985 or 86. And little did I know back then, when I saw the long flowing feathered back hair and the Jordache jeans and the Coca-Cola shirt and the swatch and all that cool stuff, that all these years later I would end up married to her. Her name's Kim. And recently, a picture surfaced of her back when she was a kid. She did BMX racing. My father-in-law passed away almost 2 years ago. Shortly before he did, he moved out of a house that they had sold, dug through his barn, and came out to our house. He had one of these with him. This is a JMC BMX bicycle my wife got for Christmas when she was about, I don't know, maybe, I have to date this frame better. By the way, it doesn't weigh hardly anything. It's pretty cool. She probably got this when she was 10, I would think. It's a bucket full of parts, a couple of pink rimses, anodized pink, right up her alley. Goes with the pig theme, that and being married to me. When I was a kid, I had a Huffy Pro Thunder 4, Pro Thunder, something like that. And I had a couple of Free Spirit BMX bicycles, which were sold at Sears, and I loved them. But all my really cool friends had GTs and Mongooses and Diamondbacks and Redlines, and there was all kinds of names for bicycles back then in the 80s. I'm not going to restore this bicycle, but I am going to spruce it up and get it back together and make it rideable. My name's Jason, and this is Greasebelly Garage. Come on. There we go. Come on, baby. Ah. Really ultra light frame. JMC on the front. JMC Racing on the side. And then stamped back here in the rear is a serial number, 3180. Now, I have to admit I don't know much about classic or vintage collectible BMX bikes, and I'm not even sure if this is all that collectible. But I know that JMC was a good name, it was a good bike, and it was expensive for its time, according to her dad. I know for a fact it doesn't have the large bearing carrier in the frame for the crank. There's something about that I've heard. And I think the handlebars are not JMC bars. I'll try to identify them the best I can. And this crank, I believe this is a 3-piece crank because these two pedal arms come off. And then there's like a bearing carrier, cylinder, barrel, duber thing in there. And then there's some brakes. Now I think BMX bikes only had one brake back then. It was on the rear. And this is a correct link to be a rear brake only bike. But she raced, you know, in a league or in a circuit or whatever you call that for BMX stuff. I don't know how to identify rimses. I know this is one of those freewheeling hub dubers here. So if anybody's got any information about that, feel free to drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. I've got a newer seat in this bucket that might go on it. I think it was bought with the intention of replacing the seat. This is the original super comfortable seat that came with the bike. I think I'm going to put this back on only for the vintage. I like the vintage look. Now this bike up here, we've got the old nutcracker protector up here, which obviously, I don't know, I guess when girls rode it, it was no longer a nutcracker, athletic supporter pad. And I think this pad here would go on this bar, and this one here would go across the top of the handlebars. I did go to the local bicycle shop and pick up a couple of new brake pads. I may have to go on YouTube and learn how to put this thing back together, I guess. Probably just leave these sun faded and vintage looking because I really do like vintage stuff. I think it's really cool. Survivor, I like Survivor stuff. This brake seems to be in good condition actually. Probably lubricate this cable up and I'll probably take some lube, put it down in this sleeve, and then use compressed air and just force all the lube through the sleeve of the cable and get that going good again. I don't know if these are designed to come apart or if these little holes are designed to lube it, but this thing feels as dry as a popcorn fart for real. But the first thing I'm going to do is try to take what I can apart and get this chrome flame. Flame is a really dirty frame. We call it a flame. I'm trying to get this thing cleaned up with some old school products. And there's all kinds of ways to do it online. I've seen people soak these in citric acid and vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and big tubs and tanks and things. This has just been sitting around in storage. Probably a really good washing would do it a lot of good. Okay, I started by taking the crank apart. Took a little fidgeting to get this right here. We got this thing here basically goes in there into this duber here, whatever you call it, and there's a series of spacers inside there too. And then this is the bearing on the end. So there's another bearing cup here. This one turns, in other words, if this one on this side, which would be the right side of the bike frame, turns clockwise to loosen, this one would turn clockwise to tighten. So I guess that would make this right-hand thread. But I'm going to keep all these spacers together. I could not get this pedal arm off of the center shaft, but it doesn't really need to be. I'm not even 100% sure it does come off. It probably does. I believe this is a 3-piece crank. But I'm going to take all this apart, and I'm going to soak all the bearings and stuff in some carburetor cleaner buckets or whatever. Well, this thing reminds me of being 12 again. Got the, I forget what this thing's called. I don't know, a tree or something maybe? Triple tree? Well, that's a motorcycle term. I cannot get the bearings out of the end of that thing. I don't know how to do it. But what I'm gonna do is just clean this up and clean those bearings up and grease them really good because they're in really good condition. I don't think cleaning them is gonna hurt a thing. Okay, I wound up using some Cherry Bomb hand cleaner to get the heavy grease and stuff off. And now I'm soaking the frame and the fork down into a plastic tub with Pine Sol and water just to let some of the little cracks soak up. Then I'm going to hit it with an SOS pad and probably a little Osfo for the rust. Clean up the other parts inside too. Okay, for my bearings and the crank and stuff, I'm basically just soaking them in this carburetor cleaner bucket, kind of moving them around a little bit, sloshing it around. I know what you're thinking. Those things are probably pretty cheap, and they probably are, but this is a vintage, semi-original stuff here from the 80s, and it's in really good shape, and I want to try to save it without, hopefully this toxic stuff, caustic stuff in here doesn't trash everything. After some further research, this appears to be, the serial number on the bike is 3180, and I think it's a JMC Mini. The Mini part is the tube that the crank goes into. On the big ones they're big, and on the Minis they're little, apparently. So this is a serial number 3180, which makes it approximately like a late 1980, I think, from what I read. Or is it? Yeah. There's no JMC in front of the number. There's no K. It's not a Daryl Young. It's not anything extravagant or rare. It's just a 3180 frame, and I'm pretty sure that's a Mini, or a standards are the bigger ones. Mini is the mini one. So I can guarantee you one thing though, I couldn't ride it anyway, Mini or standard. I'm just way too big for that. It'll look really good in the back of my 85 Toyota pickup, I think. And the only thing I'm gonna need is a Duran Duran cassette tape, and I'll be ready to party like it's 1985. Okay, I let this frame soak in that hot tub of Pine Sol overnight. Now I've got the handlebars down in there, and I shined all this up the best I could. I'll probably go back and do a final polish on this when it's all put together. There's some rust that's permanent on here, like up in here, down on this thing here, up in the fork of the neck, or whatever you call that thing up there. I got the bearings all cleaned out really good. What I did is I kind of degreased them really good with water, and then I pretty much jammed an entire can of brake cleaner in there and spun them. They're spinning pretty freely now. Got all the dirt and old grease out. Got this front fork fairly well cleaned up now. I got this triple tree duber, which I guess this top part here is really a grease seal for the bearings. I got that all cleaned up pretty good. I also inadvertently found out that brake cleaner does a really good job of cleaning these anodized parts. So thankfully I have a case of that. I picked up some of the special Park tool. He said this is some kind of bearing grease. I suppose that's what it is. He said it's a good product. Upon further investigation, Park Tool has a whole bunch of YouTube videos about BMX bikes, which have come in handy for me as well. But I want you to keep in mind, I'm not restoring this bike. I'm just cleaning it up and getting it back together with all the old vintage parts. Oh, and I did get these bearings all nice and clean too. Spacers and everything. That carburetor cleaner did a great job of cleaning that. I'm just gonna pack this the best I can with that grease. Down in here, you can see the needle bearings in there, or roller bearings, whatever they are. Start getting all this back together. Progress has been made. Handlebars are back on, hand grips are cleaned up. The lower bracket has the pedal assemblies in it now. It's working nice and smooth. Much better than before. The old raggedy plastic hard seat is on. Got all these bearings repacked. Also repacked the bearings in there as well. I've determined this extra, I don't know what this gear is. Guess this gear would make it go slower but have more pull. I took the brake cable and suspended it from my, this is a test bench for central ACs. I use this to test out central AC units in my garage. I just hung this cable, pulled it up, and just filled this whole sleeve with lubricant because I wanted to try to save this. And I think it probably worked. I also repacked these bearings to some extent. The bearings in these wheels are basically shot. But this is just a display bike. It doesn't necessarily have to ride so much. So you can feel them, you know, they're kind of bumpy. But they've been greased, oiled, repacked, put back together. And they just are what they are at this point. I'm not gonna upgrade the rims on this thing at all. Couple of developments. One, I found that Walmart Mongoose version of a bike, I believe. It looks like a pretty decent bike, but I found it in a pile of trash. And since I don't have my tires in yet that I got for this, I'm gonna go ahead and just swap the tires and tubes out of that onto this so I can complete this and make some adjustments and whatnot. I picked up a few more things at the bicycle store. Got some liquid silk because it had a cool name. I got some, these are called chain ring, steel single chain ring bolts. And I also didn't know that they made such a tool, but this is a chain tool because I bought a new chain for this bike, but I didn't know how to get the link apart without cutting it. So apparently they make a tool that does that for you. So I'm gonna get cracking on it and get the chain on here first, and then swap out those tires and tubes if I remember how to do that. Those are street tires. I ordered knobby tires for this bike, but that's easy enough to swap those out after the fact. Working on this bike has been quite the experience because I didn't really realize this at first, but it's kind of let me go back and kind of experience some of my wife's childhood with her. And it's been really fun, you know, seeing pictures of it, talking to her mom about it, and all the, you know, records they kept and things like that, trophies that she won with it. But I got the bike back together as original as it once was in 1980, or as close to it as it could be today. I'm still waiting on the correct tires to show up, but I put it together with the other tires off the Mongoose and the tubes and pumped it up, and everything works. The brakes work, it rides straight, the wheels are true, the bearings seem okay. Everything turned out pretty darn good for something that's been sitting around for, I don't know, 40 years? 40 years? It's been sitting around for 30 years anyway, but it's 43 years old, pretty much. Let me show it to you. There's the final product, as original as it could be. It has the original pad set. It's got the nutcracker pad, the chest pad for the handlebar, and the other, I don't know what that pad is on the top bar. The original brake, original rims, original pedals, 3-piece crank, the original seat, which is in really poor condition. Now here's some of the problems I have with this bike. Seat post is stuck in the frame. I could not get it out of there. I can't get it to adjust up. It looks like somebody may have tried to cut it off. That may have been a problem when it was in storage, but I want to work on that at a future date and get a different seat. I'm gonna have to get a different seat. It's just crumbling apart. I cleaned up all the pad set with brake cleaner. It looks better. The hand grips look better. The hand grips are not the originals in the picture. They're some other aftermarket version. But everything else, with the exception of the tires and the chain, notice I got the pretty pink chain for my wife. I also got her some Dice valve stem caps. But I got adjustments to do and more cleaning. It's a really cool bike. Tires are holding air really good. I mean, this thing weighs basically nothing. I mean, you can tell these things were built rock solid. So that's the revived version of this bike. There's gonna be more to come in the future with it. I'm gonna get new bearings for the wheels and maybe spruce it up just a bit more than it is now. So for all you BMX lovers, something a little different for you car guys this week too. And I just wanted to do this for, you know, haven't worked on a bicycle in a long time. It was just like going back in time. If you like this video at all, do me a favor and give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, do me a favor and give me a thumbs up. I need to get the air conditioning going in the shop, I can tell you that. So subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and I really appreciate you guys watching.
See you next time.
All right.
Tune in again.
Thanks for watching.
Yep.